Well, we finally got some big news out of Nintendo today. So things are happening, I think.
I think it's safe to say the Switch 2 generation has officially kicked off as of today.
I guess so.
Let's take a look at the tweet which was shared after the financial event. This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation. End of message.
Whoa,
wow.
This
a lot there.
Is Furukawa. You know you love a Nintendo
I'm used
message.
to it being Miyamoto. Now we got Furukawa.
I know.
What?
I was gonna say this is Aonuma.
Who's next?
we know they mean business when they started like that.
Yes.
So this was made during the financials that Nintendo had with their shareholders. Basically, Furukawa confirms that they will be announcing Switch 2 before the fiscal end, which is before April 1st of 2025. That is when Nintendo's fiscal year ends, March 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So sounds like we're going to be getting something between now and then.
Obviously, no mention of when the system is coming out.
Right, exactly.
You know, that was kind of the rumor that had been happening of there was some sort of an internal delay. Obviously, right now we're focused on strictly the announcement or reveal of the system itself.
Exactly. And then he goes on to say that there is going to be a Nintendo Direct in June, which is about typical timing for Nintendo to do a Direct. So this is probably one of the earliest confirmations we've had for a Nintendo Direct. Typically, Nintendo doesn't announce these things until about 48 or 24 hours before. And he makes it very clear that in this June Nintendo Direct, there is going to be no mention, not a sniff, of Switch 2 or the successor to Switch. I want to ask you how you feel this announcement is basically like indicating how they're feeling on the inside. Like, how does it fill you with confidence, the way that they're making this announcement, or does it fill you with dread that something is happening?
No, I feel pretty good. You know, there was just all this buildup of anxiety of what is the future for Nintendo hold? We don't really have any Switch games on the horizon.
Yeah.
The rumor mill is spinning about maybe the unsteady state of the planning for the launch of the Switch 2, and they kind of settled a lot of this business all at once with this tweet. And it's also important to look at, you know, like who is their intended audience for this tweet. So this is part of their overall financial communications. This was shared on their investor relations Twitter account. So you know, this is not a message that they see as meant for general consumers. Obviously, all of us are, you know, breaking it down and analyzing it today, but this is primarily for the financial community as they see it. That is the intended recipient of this message.
Yeah, the intended, you know, sort of intention of this message is for them to fill their investors with confidence that their business is going to be very successful for the rest of this year. They still have a lot of plans to support original Nintendo Switch and make sure the investors understand that there is, you know, financial goals and business goals for the next fiscal year. So I think it's kind of a more dry type message, not like the flashy reveals that is more facing the fans. But I do think it does what it's intended to do, and it does, you know, sort of squelch any of those rumors. And if I were an investor, I would feel pretty good. I'd be like, great, you guys seem to have your ducks in a row. That's all very good.
Yeah, I think another message that's meant to be sent is, hey, we are going into a different type of transition, a different type of year.
Yeah.
A different type of months upcoming than we typically do. You know, when we're in the hardware generation, it's very cyclical. We have big games that come out during holiday. We make announcements, you know, at these big Nintendo Directs. So I think they're kind of indicating like, hey, things are going to be a little bit different for the next year-ish or so as we go through this transition, which we are really getting into as of today. The other big question, though, you know, maybe less important, is the question of what is still left in the Nintendo Switch. You know, they've said we're having a Direct in June. Some people were wondering, after
Is it even
after Luigi's
happening?
Mansion,
Yeah.
like, is that it? Are we just going to be twiddling our thumbs? So they did settle that. Yes, we will. There will be some games, but don't get your hopes up. We're not talking about Switch 2 there. That's going to be coming later. So I think this was a very effective communication by them, not dissimilar to the announcement that they mentioned in March 2015 when they did indicate, yes, we're working on new hardware.
Right.
The context with that one was that was announced alongside the announcement of we're going into mobile. So they kind of needed to let people know, hey, we're not getting out of hardware. Situation is very different here, but just, putting out that very straightforward message of, yes, this is happening. Here's what you can expect in the near future. And that just takes a lot of pressure off of them.
I think so too. And I think they do a good job. And this is something that while we were at Nintendo was a very big deal and something that they drilled into us every day was this concept of expectation management. And they're doing that exactly in this message. They're managing your expectations of when you can expect to hear more news about the next Switch. They're managing your expectations about this Nintendo Direct. At least they're telling us when it's happening, but they're also telling you that it might not be, the same type of Direct that you're used to, and don't expect to see any Switch 2 news in that Direct. So they're really playing the ultimate game of expectation management, but I do think they do that quite effectively here.
Right. There was this follow-up piece of information that came out. We have this shared by David Gibson, who's an analyst who lives in Japan. I'll read this. In the results call, when asked if the next-gen console was brand new or, Furukawa answered, Switch Next model is the appropriate way to describe it. Now, we're still waiting for an official translation of what was said. This is what we have to go on now.
Yeah.
But this is also another interesting reveal of looking at it as the next iteration of the Nintendo Switch. I think the general assumption was we're not going to upend this form factor of the console that we have.
Yeah.
The general concept of Nintendo Switch will continue on. If this is accurate, then that is essentially a confirmation of that.
Right. And I don't think that is going to be, if it's accurate, I don't think it's surprising to a lot of people because that is kind of what we all expected. Switch was so immensely successful for Nintendo. It seems like it would be sort of a waste for them to completely upend that formula, that form factor, the very easy value proposition of the Switch that they basically were communicating to all of their fans for 7+ years. It seems like that would be sort of wasted effort if they went completely away from the original Switch model. So I don't think this is surprising for people. Does this disappoint you? Are you hoping for something different?
I mean, I think overall, none of this information is really that surprising.
Exactly.
But it is good to get an official confirmation.
Yeah.
Because we've seen time and again, fans can fixate on information that is not confirmed and convince themselves that it's real. Remember the Switch Pro. Everybody was convinced that was real. Turns out that the Switch Pro was never released.
Yes.
So it is important, it is significant for them to confirm. Again, no matter how mundane, no matter how much we all expected it to happen, it is important for them to officially confirm it.
Exactly. And we haven't gotten any sort of official confirmation until last night for any of this Switch 2 rumors or just predictions that have been swirling. So the little bit of info that they are confirming, I think will help to just shut people up, honestly, and that's kind of nice.
Exactly. So looking at this June Nintendo Direct, so that's been pre-announced. We don't know exactly when in June. That was, of course, the E3 timing when they used to make their big announcements. So they're going to be sticking in that slot. No Switch 2 news. Focus on original Switch. What could potentially be in this?
Yeah, they have, like you said, after Luigi's Mansion, it's sort of a blank slate for the rest of the year. So they do need to fill out that holiday calendar a bit. I do think that it's going to be sort of smaller games, potentially more ports or remakes, maybe support of more retro games via NSO. I don't think we're going to get some sort of huge new Switch game, new franchise, or anything like that. I think it's going to be sort of, we got to save all this stuff for the next system, but we have to at least have something come out for the rest of the year to keep people, excited and still within the Nintendo family.
I don't know. I mean, last year, I look at June last summer, there was a Nintendo Direct, and people were kind of saying the same thing then, of like, we're entering the end game of Nintendo Switch, this is going to be a lackluster Direct. And that was one of the best Directs that they'd ever had, where they announced Mario Wonder, they announced all these other things. So I don't know, I don't think we can rule out that there could be something cool and surprising there. And I think you have to look closely at the language of, a game that they announce here could eventually become a dual SKU game.
Sure.
That comes out
Yep.
on Switch 2 at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
They always have what they say in their expectation management. They often break that. There's often a few instances where they make a break with what the expectation management is.
Well, that's the whole point of expectation management, is so that they can continue to surprise you.
Right.
So I mean, yeah.
I'm not, at this moment, I'm not whipping myself up into a tizzy, but if there is something that is unexpected and surprising, I'm not going to, fall out of my seat. So, games like, Metroid Prime 4. People talk about, could that be dual SKU? I don't know. It's been forever since we've heard about that. That could be something. There's this, there's games that have been rumored for so long that we haven't seen. There's this, Fire Emblem remake. That's something. The, the eternal Zelda Wind Waker and Twilight Princess ports, which you've been talking about for years and years and years.
I think ports are not out of the question. I do think ports are the easy way for them to go. Remakes also seem to be a bit formulaic for them now. They did Super Mario RPG, they're doing Thousand Year Door, they're doing Luigi's Mansion. That's a formula that I think works for them, and it is very more turnkey for them in this transitional few months. But I do think they're saving their big guns. They want to preserve the element of, surprise, and they want to preserve all those big games for the next Switch. So we are in a bit of a different kind of space now with original Switch.
Well, they have two, so they kind of have two things right now. Is preserve the opportunity with Switch 2 and make that big, but they do have one last holiday season with the Switch and make it a holiday to remember and go out with a bang. So, it would make good sense to have something strong for the holidays to drive that.
That's true.
One other thing that I'll put out there as a potential opportunity for them now is a price cut. Because the moment you announce the next hardware, there are some people who are just like,
they're going to move on.
All right, I'm mentally moving on. Right. I'm going to wait. But there are people who don't have that mindset and who are really price sensitive. And the current price of the Switch is a little just out of reach for them. So now that we have broken the seal and announced the Switch 2, they could consider a price cut in a way that they couldn't before, because they've already kind of split the consumer base. So that's another way that they can still have a really strong holiday in a way that they weren't able to before, because they couldn't touch that price.
Right, and they could even do some of those more creative things that we were talking about with price, where you have sort of really aggressive bundling. And this is a very tried and true tactic, especially around the holiday time, where they could bundle it with a lot more games, even controllers or accessories, in a way that gives you a very good price, a good deal on it that you couldn't have before. And they could just squeeze one last breath of sales out of it and then move on. So I could see that. Do you think they're going to do your year of Donkey Kong?
I would love that. I mean, that's the type of groundbreaking announcement that would get me up and applauding.
There you go. That could happen in June. That could happen in June.
I know.
You never know.
I know.
You never know.
So there was more in the Nintendo financials which were interesting. We got a look into just the state of the Nintendo Switch business here. And it's still going pretty good.
Yeah.
But we are seeing that sort of, typical generational decline, where it looks like the peak was in fiscal 2021.
Right.
And right now, with the fiscal 2024, we're kind of right back where we were around fiscal 2018 or 2019, which is to be expected, quite honestly.
Right, exactly. It's been 7 years. So is to be expected. But really, it hasn't fallen off that sharply, even in this year where there has been a significant slowdown of big, huge first-party games. They had a pretty decent holiday last holiday. I think, like you said, there were some really big games like Mario Wonder that came out. Tears of the Kingdom was out last year. So I think that helped to sustain some of that momentum last year. we talk about a lot sort of the fall off a cliff effect that you can have with an extremely popular system. And then when you don't sort of transition at the right time, you get that like cliff drop effect. I don't think we're seeing that here though. So
well, not in the financials that they reported, because
Right.
that's based on a few months ago, but it certainly has felt very dry.
Yes.
Which again speaks to that June Direct of, how long do you want people to think that nothing is happening
Right.
in the world of Nintendo? You need to give them something
to look forward to.
something to stay engaged
Yeah.
with, something to keep them having an active NSO subscription so that you
Exactly.
can make that transition.
Keep them in the ecosystem.
Yeah, we also had this very dramatic chart here showing Nintendo's profit by fiscal
My
year,
gosh,
and you can
yes.
just visualize the Switch boom.
Right,
and I think
right.
I saw somebody pointing out that if you add up the net profit of all the Switch years, it is actually more than every previous year
Ever,
combined,
yeah.
which is shocking.
It is.
So again, I think they do feel some obligation to, it's hard to top the peak years that they have there. But
Yeah.
again, you don't want to go back down, significantly down to where you were.
Don't ever go back to 2013.
Pre-Switch. And you definitely don't want to go below zero.
Don't go to 2013.
Don't go
'cause
below
that
zero.
wasn't good.
That's my business advice.
I was there in 2013 and that wasn't good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is another thing where it's really hard. Once you set the bar so high, it's going to be hard for you to replicate that kind of success.
Sure.
So the pressure is on them for that, for sure. So I know that they're feeling that on the inside.
Yeah. We also got some smaller updates on software sales. Some of those, long-term evergreen games are kind of slowly ticking upwards. New games added: Princess Peach Showtime, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, the remake for that, both over 1 million units sold globally. Not dramatically so. And, when you kind of break it down by how many regions that is, it's like, yeah, it's going to be over 1 million. But
Yeah.
Nintendo does always tout the number of million-selling software pieces that they have. So I'm sure they're feeling good that they can add that to the list.
Yeah.
And then finally, we got an update on Switch hardware sales, now over 141 million. Wow. That's a lot.
Crazy, yeah.
We have now sold well more than 10x the poor Wii U. Sorry to say.
Ouch.
Some people have, been doing the horse race of, is it going to pass PlayStation 2?
That's right.
We all remember that one of Jim Ryan's final acts was
like,
to
by the way, we have unreported numbers.
put out some new, fake numbers about the PlayStation 2. He said it was at 160 million, so that's quite a ways to
I
go.
know, right?
I've seen some people say like, oh, Nintendo really wants to pass this number. I promise you they don't.
They don't.
That does not play a factor.
They don't care.
At all in their
Yeah.
business decisions or reasoning. It would be a nice feather in their hat if they did, but
Yeah.
they're not trying to take steps to actively surpass them.
Right. They're not looking really that outwardly,
Yeah.
honestly. Nintendo has always been, and again, we were there for so many years. We know the way that they like to think, and they've never been sort of a horse race compared to competitors kind of company. They're very much about like, let's control our circle of things that we can do. Of course, it would be a nice number, but
And if they did, who knows? Jim Ryan would be like, oh, did I say 160?
I meant
I meant 260, sorry. Back to my retirement, thanks.
back to my caves. But yeah, 141 is a very incredible hardware.
And look at the
sales
software
number.
sales too. That's 1.2
2 billion?
billion with a B.
I know.
Wow.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, it's just incredible how
Yeah.
far and ahead it is of every other
is. True.
Nintendo system at this point. Really,
Yeah.
really remarkable there.
Yeah.
But yes, we are now in a new era.
Welcome,
The air
everyone.
smells different. The light
Yes.
is hitting different.
What does it feel like to you guys?
It's incredible. So it's an
Yes.
exciting times ahead for all of us.
I think so. Well, let us know what you thought of everything that came out today from Nintendo. Are you excited about the next Switch? Are you excited about the June Nintendo Direct? Tell us all about your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. We're going to wrap it up, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.